Do you know how many women have looked into the eyes of a man and seen nothing but chaos? Not passion, not presence, but a war raging behind the veil of his smile, one he hasn't even admitted to himself. And yet, he wonders why she cannot trust him, why she turns away, even as she once reached for him. A man without dominion over his mind is a storm in disguise. He builds, he burns, he rebuilds again, never realizing the ruins are of his own making. His shadow walks one step ahead of him, whispering in the voice of pride, of fear, of the wounded child he refuses to meet. But there is another kind of man, a rare kind, a man not defined by conquest, but by the quiet thunder of inner command. His eyes do not beg to be understood, they observe. His silence isn't confusion, it is preparation. His presence is not a performance, it is weight. This man has rules, not written in ink, but carved into the marrow of his being. And before the world could ever feel his strength, he had to face the one battlefield that makes cowards of kings, the landscape of his own mind. Because control is not suppression. It is not the clenching of fists or the flexing of willpower. Control, true control, is an intimacy with one's own darkness. The man who rules his mind does not banish his demons. He knows their names. He dines with them, listens, and then leads. There is a boy in every man. The boy who was once dismissed, shamed, overlooked. The boy who learned to armor up. Who built a kingdom of validation through women, status, and power, but never once sat with the pain that built those walls. Most men remain that boy, hardened in body, fragile in identity. They confuse emotional numbness for strength and detachment for stoicism. But stoicism was never about indifference. Marcus Aurelius wept for his people. Seneca wrote letters bathed in anguish. Epictetus taught freedom not through control of others, but through the freedom from needing control at all. The man who rules his mind is not cold, he is calm. Not distant, he is disciplined. He does not chase chaos because he has made peace with stillness. He does not panic in the presence of the feminine storm because he has weathered his own. And yet, if you listen closely, you'll hear the voices of modern men, distracted, lost, bitter. They point fingers, rage online, demand submission, idolize domination, all because they cannot dominate themselves. The world mirrors their fragmentation, and so they blame the mirror. But you listening now, if you've felt the ache of emptiness after the high wears off, if you've stared at the ceiling at 2 a.m. asking why your success doesn't soothe you, if you've lashed out at a woman because she touched a wound you forgot you had, then this isn't a lecture, it's a mirror, one that invites not judgment, but a deeper gaze. Because what lies beneath the performance of manhood is not weakness. It's the unrefined gold of your psyche. Your rage has a reason. Your need to prove has a root. Your shame is not a curse. It is a compass. Follow it inward, and you'll begin to see. Control is born not from denial, but from confrontation. The ancient Stoics did not preach emotionless detachment. They demanded responsibility. Responsibility for your thoughts, your choices, your reactivity. To know that nothing outside you can dictate your peace unless you grant it permission. And so, the first rule of the man who controls his mind is this. He responds, he does not react. Reaction is a slave to the moment. It is the wounded ego gasping for breath. Response is the product of pause, of presence, of power. A man who reacts is pulled by the tide. A man who responds is the tide. This is not softness. This is the greatest form of mastery. Because in the moments that demand force, his is clean, precise, unquestionable. He doesn't explode, he strikes. He doesn't intimidate, he commands. He doesn't dominate to feel whole, he is whole. Therefore, he does not need to dominate. Watch a man who has done shadow work walk into a room. He carries nothing yet weighs everything. His boundaries are unspoken but felt. His standards are high, not because he demands perfection, but because he refuses to abandon himself for the comfort of others. Women sense it, even if they cannot name it, and lesser men resent it because it reflects what they've avoided. And still, the man remains unmoved, because his validation isn't for sale, because his mind no longer rules him, he rules it. Most men live on autopilot, their nervous systems hijacked by traumas they never named. They confuse the noise in their heads for thought. They confuse their compulsions for desire. But beneath every compulsive man is an unhealed boy, one who never learned how to sit with pain without needing to run, to fix, to seduce, to numb. The man who controls his mind has walked through that fire. He did not flinch when his illusions cracked. He did not flee when his ego shattered. He stood still when the voices inside screamed for escape. And in that silence, raw, terrible, honest, he found something unbreakable. Because silence reveals the truth of who you are. Not the story, not the image, but the man underneath the masks. Most will never meet him. They are too addicted to distraction, too terrified of stillness. But stillness is where the voice of the Logos can be heard, the cosmic order, the universal reason. It is not loud, but it is constant. And when a man aligns with it, his life stops feeling like a storm and starts feeling like a river with direction. The second rule of the man who controls his mind: he embraces discomfort as a teacher, not an enemy. Modern comfort has softened the masculine edge, but true masculinity isn't forged in ease. It's born in pressure. Not destructive pressure, but transformative pressure. A man becomes who he is by what he can hold without collapsing. Pain isn't the problem. Pain is neutral. What warps a man is his unwillingness to face it, his habit of medicating instead of meditating, a drink to silence the loneliness, a woman to hide the shame, a scroll, a click, a chase, anything but stillness. But the man who leans into pain discovers its secret. It holds the exact lesson needed for growth. The betrayal taught him boundaries. The heartbreak taught him wholeness. The failure taught him humility. Life was never punishing him. It was sculpting him. And so, he stops asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and starts asking, "What is this here to teach me?" He becomes immune to the trivial, not apathetic, but immovable by things that once controlled him. The gossip, the judgment, the need to be liked. These things dissolve when a man has walked through the fire and found his soul intact. And what replaces them is presence. Focus, gravitas, a still intensity that calms chaos around him without speaking a word. Others sense it. They can't quite explain why they feel safer in his presence, why even their own nervous systems soften around him. But it's because he is no longer at war with himself. There is nothing to prove, no mask to maintain, no chaos to conceal. His inner order becomes a field of resonance. His life becomes his message. He does not seek control through external domination. He knows that every time he needs to manipulate, to persuade, to conquer, it is evidence that he has lost touch with his own center. And so he returns, again and again, to the breath, to the body, to the truth. He trains stillness like others train muscle, because he knows, in stillness, the wild horse of the mind bows to the rider. And still, there are moments of weakness, of doubt, of fear, but he does not deny them. He watches. He listens. He speaks to his mind as one might speak to a frightened child, with firmness, not force, with patience, not punishment. And the mind, when treated as an ally instead of an enemy, begins to soften, to trust, to obey. This is not perfection. It is not rigidity. It is the art of inner leadership, of being the sovereign of one's inner kingdom. And like any king, he must make hard decisions. The decision to leave what no longer serves, to walk away from the temptress of comfort, to say no when it would be easier to say yes, to protect his energy as if it were sacred, because it is. Women are not drawn to the loudest man in the room. They are drawn to the man who needs nothing yet offers everything, whose eyes do not hunger, but see, who listens more than he speaks, because he is not chasing approval. He is choosing alignment. And that energy, that rare, unshakable clarity, it awakens something ancient in her. It tells her without words, "You are safe here." But that safety was hard-won. It came not from affirmations or platitudes, but from deep excavation, from confronting the shadows most men run from accepting that the enemy was never out there, it was within. And in taming that inner chaos, he became something else, not just a man, a presence, a force. He does not flaunt this force. He does not decorate it with arrogance or drape it in self-righteousness. It simply is, like gravity, like fire. It is felt more than seen, understood more by its effect than its appearance. And this brings us to the third rule of the man who controls his mind. He no longer negotiates with his lower self. The undisciplined man is always in dialogue with his weakness. He bargains, he delays, he rationalizes. Just this once. Tomorrow, I'll be better. But every time he gives in, every time he abandons himself for temporary comfort, he fractures trust with the only person he must live with forever, himself. The sovereign man understands that discipline is not punishment, it is reverence. Reverence for potential. Reverence for the man he could become, the father he might be, the partner he will one day love without chains of unspoken resentment. Discipline is not about rigidity. It is the architecture of freedom. And so, he doesn't wait for motivation. He doesn't wait for the perfect time, the perfect mood, the perfect conditions. He moves when it's hard. He speaks when it's uncomfortable. He shows up when he'd rather disappear, because his word is law, not to others, but to himself. He knows the war is not outside. The war is internal, and it is constant. The ancient Stoics called this war prohairesis, the faculty of will, the power to choose one's response no matter the external storm. This, they taught, is the essence of freedom, not the absence of constraint, but the refusal to be ruled by anything outside the self. And yet, he is not harsh. He is not cruel with his flaws. The man who controls his mind has failed. Many times, he has lied, he has fled, he has hurt others and himself, but he has owned every failure, not with shame, but with scrutiny, because guilt chains a man to the past, but responsibility opens the future. He dissects his failures, not to self-flagellate, but to extract wisdom. Every misstep becomes instruction. Every wound becomes a window. And this is the quiet miracle of the inner warrior. He bleeds, and instead of hiding the wound, he studies it. He sees where the blade entered. He examines what part of him left the door open, and then he seals it, not with armor, but with awareness. He becomes a man. Women trust, not because he's perfect, but because he is accountable. She knows that if he wounds her, he will own it, not gaslight her, not project, not run. This kind of man is rare, not because it's impossible to be him, but because it demands everything you've hidden. And this leads him inevitably to the shadow. The shadow, the part of the psyche Jung called the dark side of the personality, is not evil. It is simply unacknowledged. It holds the traits you were told were unacceptable: your anger, your lust, your vulnerability, your hunger for power. Most men exile these parts and pretend they do not exist. But what is denied in consciousness festers in the unconscious. It leaks out in rage, in addiction, in sabotage. The man who controls his mind turns toward his shadow and says, "Show me." He lets it speak, not to surrender to it, but to integrate it. He does not fear his anger, he channels it. He does not repress his sexuality, he refines it. He does not run from power, he learns to wield it in service of something greater than ego. And once this integration begins, something magnificent happens: clarity. Decisions become effortless. Boundaries set themselves. The need to be everything to everyone dies quietly, and in its place rises sovereignty. This man does not explain his worth. He does not audition for acceptance. He walks into a room and feels no need to outshine anyone, because he is no longer competing with shadows. His presence does not scream. It whispers, "I am." And the world adjusts itself accordingly. Some will misunderstand him. Some will call him cold. Others will call him arrogant. But that is the price of clarity, the loss of people who preferred your confusion. And he does not mind. Because the deeper he descends into the architecture of his mind, the less he needs from the surface. He is not here to be liked. He is not here to be worshipped. He is here to remember who he is and to live from that place relentlessly. And yet, perhaps the greatest paradox is this: the more a man learns to command his mind, the less he seeks to control others. He no longer needs to assert dominance to feel strong. He no longer clings to being right to protect his identity. He has learned the fourth rule, not from books, not from sermons, but from the battlefield of his own ego. He lets go of control, where control is an illusion. Control is the great lie of the ego. It seduces with promises of safety, of predictability, of superiority. But the Stoic knew what the modern man has forgotten, that the only true power lies in mastery of what is within. Not outcomes, not people, not time, only mind, only perception, only response. So he releases his grip on the uncontrollable. He stops trying to bend the world to his will, and instead strengthens the will to move within the world without breaking. He learns to walk through uncertainty like a man who has already faced death. Not physical death, but the ego death that comes when a man stops pretending and starts being. This is what gives him peace in chaos. He may lose a job, but he does not lose his direction. He may lose a woman, but he does not lose his worth. He may lose status, money, admiration, but the throne he sits on cannot be toppled, because it was not built in the world. It was built within, and with that release comes space. Space for truth, space for love, space for the parts of himself he once disowned. And it is in this space that the final, and perhaps most sacred, rule emerges. He lives by inner alignment, not external validation. You can always spot a man who is led by validation. His choices reek of desperation. His words are shaped by what will be accepted, not what is true. He confuses attention for affection, applause for respect. And the tragedy is this: the more he chases being chosen, the further he strays from himself. But the man who controls his mind has stopped performing. He no longer wears masks for approval. He has faced the void of solitude and found it less terrifying than self-abandonment. He has stood in front of the mirror without the camouflage of ambition, of status, of sexuality, and met his own eyes without shame. He knows his flaws. He knows his genius. He does not inflate one to deny the other. He walks with both. And in that paradox, strength and softness, fierceness and stillness, chaos and order, he becomes whole. Wholeness does not mean healed. It means real, integrated, unfragmented. It means he does not need to lie to be loved. He does not need to shrink to be safe. He does not need to seek, because what he was chasing was never out there. And so he becomes the rarest thing in the modern world, a man at peace with himself. Not because life stopped hurting, but because pain no longer owned him. Not because he found the perfect partner, but because he became the partner he was seeking. Not because the world bowed to him, but because he no longer needed it to. Watch him in the quiet moments, reading under a tree, lifting in solitude, walking alone at sunrise. There is no spectacle, no performance, just a sacred stillness. The kind of stillness that speaks louder than noise, the kind of presence that heals without trying, the kind of energy that makes women lean in and men stand straighter in his presence. This man is not seeking followers. He is not preaching from a stage, but the world will begin to orbit differently around him, not because he demanded it, but because he embodied something few ever touch: inner command. And in this embodiment, he becomes deeply, terrifyingly free. Free from needing to prove. Free from needing to please. Free from the prison of his own mind. And from this freedom, his life begins to bloom, not in chaos, not in desperation, but in quiet, disciplined beauty. The boy within him no longer drives the ship, but the man does not exile him either. He holds the boy's hand, looks into his eyes, and whispers, "We are no longer afraid," and the boy rests. This is the quiet revolution, not of muscle, not of wealth, but of self. And in that revolution, a new kind of masculinity is born, one not rooted in control or performance, but in wholeness, in truth, in command. And so the man walks alone, not in isolation, but in sovereign communion with his path. He is no longer lured by the glittering chaos of society's false rewards, no longer baited by the game of more. Not more attention, not more validation, not more noise. He sees through it now, through the veil, through the illusions, through the noise that once dictated his sense of self. He has stared into the abyss of his own emptiness and made it a cathedral. He has learned that the applause dies faster than the echo of a broken promise to oneself, that the high of being chosen is a drug with a short half-life when the soul is not in agreement. That pleasure without purpose leaves a residue of shame. And now, he is unshakable. Not because he has never been broken, but because he rebuilt himself without illusion. He became the architect of his own spirit. The women who meet him sense it before a word is spoken. Their nervous systems respond like an ancient code has been activated. Not excitement, depth, not frenzy, safety. Because women do not fall in love with appearance. They fall into devotion when presence is felt. And presence is the fruit of inner order. This man does not chase women, and he does not run from them either. He holds the polarity with grace. He honors the feminine as mystery, not a puzzle to solve, but a current to respect. He is not threatened by her chaos, because he does not fear his own. He does not shrink when she tests him, because he has nothing to hide. The deepest parts of him have already been brought to the light. He has judged himself and forgiven. He has found beauty in the scars. He does not seduce, he reveals. And what he reveals is not curated. It is raw, refined, grounded truth. He does not adapt himself to gain her affection. He offers her a place to land, but never at the cost of his center. Because he knows, the moment you abandon yourself to gain another, you lose both. He no longer seeks a woman to fix his wounds. He seeks a woman to witness his wholeness. And he, in turn, sees hers. Not just her beauty, but her pain, her fire, her shadows. He sees it all and does not flinch. Because this man, he is not afraid to feel. He is not afraid to hold. That kind of man? He does not compete. He does not impress. He simply is. And the world bends differently around men like this. Still, the path is not easy. It demands the death of the false self again and again. It demands walking away from comfort, applause, fantasy. It demands choosing the soul's truth over society's approval. Again and again and again. But the rewards, they are not material. They are sacred. You begin to trust your own silence more than another's opinion. You begin to walk into rooms and feel no need to explain. You begin to attract only those who resonate with your truth, because all else falls away. There is no more force, no more striving, no more grasping. There is just movement, purposeful, fluid, clean. And in this movement, he becomes the example, not the preacher, not the performer, but the proof. The living proof that a man can walk through the fire and come out, not hardened, but clear, not brittle, but forged, not angry, but anchored. This man is not for everyone, but those who meet him never forget him. He is the storm's calm. He is the silence after the roar. He is the one who chose depth over distraction, principle over popularity, soul over spectacle. And in the end, what he radiates is not bravado. It is peace. The kind of peace that cannot be faked. The kind of peace that comes from knowing nothing outside me holds power over me. Not her affection, not his opinion, not the market, not the past, not the future. Only this breath, only this choice, only this moment. The man who controls his mind is not trying to win the world. He has already won himself, and that, in the end, is everything.